Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Well, Robinson Smith will be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC. Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Ryan Bernstein is preparing to track the Falcon 9 rocket this afternoon and also do some still photography as well. Michael Kane has the afternoon off. You can see the weather is beautiful here on the wide shot from the press site. So we're anticipating a good launch of the Falcon 9 rocket coming up in less than an hour. If you'd like to follow our launch photography team, you can find the fellows over on X, formerly known as Twitter. Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. While you're over there, you can go ahead and follow Spaceflight Now as well, simply at Spaceflight Now. Or if you're not on X, you can also find our presence over on Threads and Facebook. We're also joined in our coverage today by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck Briggs. Take a look from Chuck's camera view here. We appreciate the fellows for helping us out this afternoon. Taking a look here at the center of your screen, this is Historic Launch Complex 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We're T-minus 56 minutes, 45 seconds and counting to the launch of the latest Falcon 9 rocket on a mission called the Starlink 6-56 mission. This will be the 32nd dedicated flight launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites this year. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 2:42 p.m. Eastern. For our friends joining us from around the world, that is 1842 UTC. And for those who have been keeping up on the live stream here on YouTube, waiting for it to begin, or monitoring via social media or our website, spaceflightnow.com, you'll likely have noticed that the T0 time has been shuffled to the right throughout the afternoon. SpaceX rolled out the Falcon 9 rocket somewhat late this morning. Didn't raise it to the vertical launch position until after 9 o'clock. And so they do need some amount of time after raising it to be able to move into the countdown. They're currently targeting again 2:42 p.m. Eastern, 1842 UTC, which is the end of the window today. So unlike my usual spiel where I say they'll have a number of launch attempts until X time, well, this is the until X time. If they're not able to launch for whatever reason today, however, they do have a backup window tomorrow, Thursday, May 9th, which begins at 10:16 a.m. Eastern, 14:16 UTC. Again, that's if necessary. Before we get too much further in the stream, want to take a beat and thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat who are helping to keep things kosher there and allow folks to have good, hearty conversation while not feeling attacked or disparaged if they don't have super robust knowledge on spaceflight or what's going on. We welcome everyone here who has an open mind and a hunger for knowledge. And so we encourage everyone who is joining us in the live chat to be kind and remember any launch that we cover could be someone's first. So if they have a question they know the answer to, feel free to help them out in the live chat. And to that end, our thanks to AstroGen and Rusty Shackelford for helping us out in the live chat today. Keep our eyes peeled for Stephanie B. and Astro Joe. Thank you to the more than 2,100 of you who are joining with us as our live coverage is getting underway. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button. It allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this coverage to more folks as we continue to step through the count. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So our thanks to folks like Yanda Heidi, Zephyr Wolf, Debbie Sunset, Jamie Setchell, aka JJ, Cappy Cross, Butterfly, and many others. Jeff Hansen, Steve Brock, Jean Marquis, just to name a few more. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all of the liftoffs of the various rockets here in 4K. It's been a busy morning here on Florida's Space Coast. It's not only were teams with SpaceX preparing to launch this Starlink 6-56 mission, which is currently 52 minutes, 22 seconds away from now. The United Launch Alliance also is on the move, or has been on the move. It rolled its Atlas V rocket with Boeing Starliner spacecraft on top back into the building that you see there on the far right-hand corner, the top of the tree line there. That is the Vertical Integration Facility, or the VIF. On the far left-hand side, you can see the pad there at Space Launch Complex 41, where the rocket was just this morning. It's now back inside the VIF, where they will, as ULA President CEO Tory Bruno phrased it, use some tooling to stretch the Centaur upper stage of the Atlas V rocket and allow them to access a problematic valve that regulates LOX pressure that caused the scrub of the Starliner mission back on Monday. So currently the plan is to replace it and then roll the rocket back out to the pad in pursuit of their next launch opportunity, which is coming up a week from this Friday. It's May 17th at 6:16 p.m. Eastern. In the briefing following the scrub, Boeing's Mark Nappy, who is the manager of the commercial crew program for the company, said that the Starliner spacecraft itself is in good condition. It is still healthy and will be ready to support the launch of NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Sonny Williams, just as soon as the valve is replaced and they are back on the pad. Tory Bruno also mentioned that the valve issue that came up wouldn't normally necessarily have scrubbed the mission. In fact, it's something that they've encountered before, basically a rapid, at least partial opening or closing. And because they've decided to replace the valve, it seems that it had fully opened and closed enough times that it was pushing close to the end of the life that that particular valve has, which is about 200,000 cycles. And so they decided to replace that here on a non-crewed mission. Bruno said that they could normally just cycle through it, basically force it closed and force back open, and that would eliminate the problem. But that would, as he would phrase it, change the state of the rocket. And per ULA launch rules, they do not change the state of the rocket when there are humans present at the pad, which there very much were at the time of the scrub, which is about 8:30 on Monday. NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Sonny Williams were already seated in the Starliner capsule. They were strapped in. They were going through some of the final procedures. The hatch was still open, so the blue team was also present at the pad. And so the decision was made to stand down from the launch attempt on Monday so that they could do a more thorough analysis, which they did overnight on Monday, continued to take a look at the data on Tuesday, and ultimately made the decision that it was best to roll the rocket back to the VIF, replace the valve, roll back out, and pursue a mission launch again on May 17th, which is a week from this Friday. Not much concern for the schedule on the ISS. NASA's Dana Weigel said that the station schedule is pretty open from now until the launch of the SpaceX Crew 9 mission. That's not until around the August timeframe. So there's still plenty of opportunity to launch and land this mission, and there's not a lot of constraint on the station schedule, which is certainly a good thing. So we will continue to monitor the progress of the Atlas V, let you know when it's preparing to roll back out to the pad. We'll let you know when you can track that. You can always keep an eye out on things, though, with our 24-hour live stream. It's over on Launchpad Live. Coming back to the mission that we have on hand today, though, the launch of a Falcon 9 rocket. We're T-minus 47 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. In less than 10 minutes, we'll begin the start of the propellant load sequence. That'll start with teams taking a poll to determine if they're in a good configuration to start fueling the rocket. SpaceX uses a load and go type of fueling. So they're not able to hold their countdown once fueling operations have begun. And because they are at the end of the window, they really just have the one shot on this. So once we pass certain milestones, they're either going for it or they are not. Again, SpaceX does have a backup opportunity tomorrow if needed. Before we go fully into the countdown timeline, just a quick note on the weather here. See, just taking a look at the flagpole here, it is a little breezy at the press site, but the 45th Weather Squadron and their forecast indicates that weather should not be a big constraint to launch today. They forecast about 90% favorable conditions with just the somewhat standard cumulus cloud rule in effect. The only thing of note that they laid out is that the solar activity is in the moderate levels. But as far as I can recall, there's not been a launch that's been scrubbed due to solar activity that I can remember, but maybe Stephen can jump in my ear and let me know if I'm misremembering something or if there's something I just was not aware of. But you saw in that radar view just a second ago, not much cloud hanging over the area. You can see in the wide shot, it is still pretty picturesque here at the press site. So shifting to the countdown timeline again, we are at the end of the window for SpaceX, so no margin for error as far as the start of fueling, and we'll let you know if we hear one way or the other any updates on this. But assuming SpaceX is in a good position to start fueling the Falcon 9, here's how it's going to go down. Things start moving with the call and the start of prop load by the SpaceX launch director. It comes at T-minus 38 minutes. And if that go-ahead is in fact given, fueling starts with a couple of events simultaneously. RP-1 or rocket-grade kerosene is loaded onto both the first and the second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, second stage LOX load begins. Before that happens, we'll see a fairly striking event called the Big Vent. Happens as the feed lines are chilled at the pad along the strong back. Happens at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. And assuming that is on time, it's a good visual indication that fueling continues to move along on pace. At T-minus 7 minutes, the Falcon 9's engine chill down sequence begins. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. It protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the strong back or the transporter erector will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stays in that position until liftoff. at which point it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen load should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. And in the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And then if all 9 Merlins ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff, which again currently is targeting 2:42. Although SpaceX has shuffled multiple times throughout the day. So I just want to set expectations that they may or may not be in a prime position to move forward. We have not heard that SpaceX is within an hour of the count, and so they may have one last surprise for us today. We will, of course, be with you up until the point that we either hear that things are not moving forward today, or, of course, if they are ready to proceed with the launch, then we'll be here with you throughout that whole process, naturally. SpaceX has support for this countdown from its Hangar X site here at KSC, the center where they refurbish their Falcon 9 vehicles and prepare them for future flights, as is the case with this one. Fairly young booster, though, that's preparing to launch, hopefully today. In the SpaceX fleet, this is booster tail number B1083, launching for just the third time. Previously ported a Starlink launch, as well as its first flight, which was for the Crew 8 mission just earlier this year. This will be one of the faster turnarounds of a booster if the mission is successful. Not the fastest turnaround, but among the faster turnarounds. This will be a 28-day difference between its last Starlink launch and the one anticipated this afternoon. Once this launch moves forward, whether it's today or tomorrow, it will be an historic moment for this launch pad as well. Currently, the Falcon family of vehicles for SpaceX is tied with the total number of shuttle flights that this pad experienced over its life. That stands at 82. 82 shuttles and 82 Falcon rockets. That is both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy together. Today will mark the 83rd launch of a Falcon vehicle from this pad. SpaceX will take over that top spot. Just another point in time marker for what has been a stated goal of the Kennedy Space Center for a long time, of actualizing it as a multi-user spaceport. And a few other prime examples are quite this stark, as SpaceX moving past 30-year history of the space shuttle program with the number of launches that this company has had from this pad. Currently T-minus 39 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Less than 2 minutes now to the planned point to which the SpaceX launch director would make the call on the startup prop load. Again, that would begin at the T-minus 35-minute mark. And if they are not ready to proceed with fueling today, then that's the ball game right there. We'll have to look at a launch opportunity tomorrow, but let's stay positive and hope for the best. Should also mention that if you'd like to ask a question, or if you have a comment or just want to show some support for the channel, in addition to channel membership, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Love to make you a part of the show. Again, as long as your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the broadcast. It is, of course, a busy day for SpaceX as they are preparing not only to launch the Starlink 6-56 mission in hopefully just a little over 38 minutes from now, but they are also planning another Starlink flight over in Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That Starlink mission is Starlink 8-2, heading up to the eighth shell of the Starlink constellation. It's also flying in a southeasterly trajectory, same as the mission we'll be seeing here in hopefully less than 38 minutes. Starlink 8-2 mission set to launch just a little before 11 o'clock here on the East Coast, just before 8 o'clock there in California. Noteworthy with that mission, there are 20 Starlink satellites on board, but 13 of those have the direct-to-cell capability, which will bring the total DTC satellites in the Starlink fleet up to 25 following that mission launch. You can bet we'll have our regular live launch coverage on that Starlink mission starting about 30 minutes before that planned liftoff. So hope you, after this mission, have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here a little later on today as well. We're now T-minus 36 minutes, 52 seconds and counting, though, to this Starlink flight. Less than 2 minutes now from the point at which SpaceX would need to start fueling the rocket if it is, in fact, ready to support flight of this Falcon 9 today. Now T-minus 35 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Less than a minute from the planned start of fueling. And as we anticipate that, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be heading after liftoff. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? As previously mentioned in the context of the California-based Starlink mission, same will be true for the Starlink 6-56 mission here in Florida. After the rocket lifts off from Launch Complex 39A here at Kennedy Space Center, it'll fly in a southeasterly trajectory, soaring to the east of the Bahamas. Last couple of times we've seen daylight flights of Falcon 9 rocket on a Starlink mission, we've actually got some really nice views of the Bahamas from the Falcon 9 first stage onboard cameras. So look for those views again today. A little more than 8 minutes after liftoff, the first stage booster, tail number B1083 in the SpaceX fleet, is going to land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. It's got a pair of those here in Florida, and the one on deck this afternoon is a shortfall of gravitas. First, the payload fairings will be jettisoned just a little bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen as well, and be scooped up by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels. This is what that recovery process looks like. They float down to the ocean waters under this port of parachutes. SpaceX saves about $6 million in each of their recoveries, so it's an important part of their business model. Here's what that looks like, bringing the payload fairings on board the recovery vessel. And fortunately, we do have word now from SpaceX that fueling is underway. And so SpaceX still keeping hope alive that they can launch the Falcon 9 rocket tonight, or excuse me, this afternoon, 33 minutes, 45 seconds from now. And again, as we had mentioned, and as you can see in the wide shot here, Florida weather currently go for launch for SpaceX. It's a bit of a toasty day for Central Florida, but fortunately, the heat is not so dramatic that it will impact the launch attempt of the Falcon 9. Now T minus 32 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank the more than 5,200 of you that are watching with us live. If you haven't already, sure would love it if you could help us out by hitting the like button. Allow some more folks to find their way into the live coverage here as we're approaching the final 30 minutes of the count. And again, we do have word that fueling is in fact underway for this first of potentially two Falcon 9 launches today. Also want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, SG, for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate that, SG. Good to see you again this afternoon. Now T minus 30 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. At this point in the countdown, SpaceX is loading cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9 first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. That same process will happen on the Falcon 9 second stage at about T minus 25 minutes. As suggested by the name of the mission, there will be another batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites on board this Falcon 9 rocket, heading up to low Earth orbit. 23 of those V2 minis in particular. This will be SpaceX's 32nd dedicated Starlink launch in 2024. Taking a look at some of the payload facts. You can see here on the center of your screen, that's an image of what the Starlink satellites look like stacked in a launch configuration. Each of them clocking in at about 1,760 pounds or about 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, as opposed to the previously used Krypton Hall thrusters. Argon Hall, a little bit more cost-effective. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. They'll be deployed at about 200 miles or 320 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. Currently T minus 27 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the Falcon 9 rocket from the vantage point of our friend Chuck Briggs. You mentioned this is a fairly young booster compared to some of the others in SpaceX's fleet. Already got a couple that are still around and kicking that of 20 flights apiece. SpaceX is working towards qualifying its boosters for up to 40 flights. So look for some of those flight leaders to launch Starlink missions. That's usually their plan to test the capability and the limits of the Falcon 9 rocket, learn more about them, and they'll do those using the Starlink missions. This will be a fairly quick booster history here for 1083. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Obviously, even if it's still just a couple of missions, it's a couple of important missions. Starting off with its first crewed flight, which was back on March 4th of this year, sending up the Crew 8 mission using a SpaceX Dragon Endeavour. The first Dragon supporting astronauts now back at the space station after launching Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, now two former NASA astronauts. And that Dragon will be docked to the station and prepared to be met by Boeing Starliner spacecraft when they are able to launch that mission again. Starliner crew flight test targeting May 17th, a week from this Friday. Second and final mission came up just last month on April 10th. That was the Starlink 6-48 mission, launching from pad 40 with the landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. I mentioned it was going to be quick, and well, that's it. Looking for mission number 3 today in 25 minutes and counting. And as a reminder, at this point, SpaceX is loading that cryogenic helium on board the Falcon 9 second stage now at this point. Just a handful of minutes away from the start of the so-called big vent at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. That'll be a good visual indication that fueling is in fact on track. Now T minus 23 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the live chat here, want to thank Distributor 69 for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Distributor. Really appreciate your support on that level and for your support as an ongoing channel member. And to Juan Lofts also for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Juan. Taking a look at the chat just to answer Titus Kitchen's question, one of our channel members asking when the Vandenberg launches tonight. That is coming up at 7:48 p.m. Pacific, 10:48 p.m. Eastern, 02:48 UTC. At least that is the earliest that they will be launching. We will see if the Vandenberg SpaceX team is able to stick a little closer to the start of that window. We're now T-minus 21 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Just a little over a minute away from the start of the big vent here, the Pad 39A. T-minus 20 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. See the big vent now in progress here. Get a good visual indication that fueling is moving along right on pace. This will last until about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds as they are thermally conditioning the feed lines in preparation for second stage liquid oxygen load. T-minus 17 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. Just under a minute left remaining on the big vent. So far, it has been a pretty unremarkable countdown today, which is exactly what you'd like to see. Just everything moving right along pace and exactly how you'd expect it. Taking a look at our live chat here as we're coming to the last about 15 seconds of the big vent. Want to thank the nearly 10,000 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button as we're coming into the final quarter of an hour left before planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-56 mission. Let the YouTube algorithm do its thing and bring in some more folks. That'd be much appreciated. Also, in the realm of appreciation, want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, Nelson Reyes, for gifting 5 Spacelight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Nelson, as the big vent has come to a close. If you are one of our newest channel members, be sure to thank Nelson in the live chat if you haven't already. And I want to welcome Steve Roberts joining us in the channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Steve. Welcome aboard, and we're glad to have you with us. We're now T-minus 15 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. At this point, liquid oxygen is being loaded on board the Falcon 9's second stage. This is the final bit of fueling that had not begun, which is now in work. We're now T-minus 14 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. I want to welcome another new channel member, Charles, joining us at the pad leader level. Good to see you with us here, Charles. Hope you're doing well today. I want to take a beat to talk about the launch timeline of the mission. This is the anticipated milestones after the Falcon 9 rocket leaves the pad, and we're expecting on a nominal flight and when these events will come up. Of course, they're targeting a T0 liftoff at 2:42 p.m. Eastern, 18:42 UTC, a little less than 14 minutes from now. Following that, at about T+1 minute and 12 seconds, the Falcon 9 will pass through max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. It'll be followed by a few different events in fairly rapid succession. First, we'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, followed by stage separation, then second stage engine ignition, or SES1, and then just about the 3-minute mark, the payload fairings will be jettisoned. A few minutes after that, at T+6 minutes and 9 seconds, the first stage entry burn begins, lasting about 24 seconds in total. The landing burn will start at T+7 minutes 55 seconds, with touchdown on the drone ship of shortfall gravitas expected at about the T+8 minutes and 18 second mark. The second stage engine, or the Merlin vacuum engine, will cease firing for second stage engine cutoff, or SECO1, T+8 minutes and 39 seconds. After that, the Falcon 9 second stage will go into parking orbit, or coast phase, until a brief 2-second burn starting at T+54 minutes and 15 seconds, setting up for deployment of the 23 Starlink satellites at T+1 hour, 5 minutes, and 22 seconds. We're now T-minus 12 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. Just a little over 5 minutes away from the start of the engine chill down sequence that begins at T-minus 7 minute mark. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Just taking a look at the live chat. I think there was a question, don't recall who asked it, but asking about the status of Boeing Starliner spacecraft and when that launch is coming up. It is currently targeting no earlier than Friday, May 17th. So a week from this Friday is when the ULA Atlas V rocket will launch supporting Boeing Starliner spacecraft with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Sonny Williams on board. Spent about a week docked to the station and then return for a land landing somewhere in the southwest United States. Have about 5 different landing sites to choose from, and it'll be driven by weather conditions and the timing of undocking from the station. And T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Minute and a half away from the engine chill down sequence beginning, and want to welcome our newest channel member, the Goated One Northeast, joining us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Our thanks also to Linda Schomburger for a $7 Canadian super chat. Always wonderful to see our international friends be with us for live launch coverage. And a thanks to Web Agency, who is not themselves a channel member, but gifted a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Web Agency. Thanks so much for expanding our little family here on YouTube. And thank you as well to the more than 16,000 of you who are joining with us for our live coverage this afternoon. I know it is a Wednesday, still smack dab in the middle of the workday for a lot of folks. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us for the launch of the Starlink 6-56 mission. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button. It allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this coverage to more folks as we're coming into the final, just a little more than 7 minutes of the count here. As we're preparing to see the launch of this Falcon rocket in now less than 7 minutes, let's go ahead and take a moment and step through the parts of the vehicle, let you know a little bit more about SpaceX's workhorse rocket, Falcon 9, standing tall at about 70 meters or 229 feet, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that made up by Falcon 9 first stage. Again, this booster has only flown twice before, once for a Starlink mission, once for the Crew 8 Dragon flight up to the ISS. This is booster B1083 in the SpaceX fleet. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene, RP1, and liquid oxygen, and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment, you can see the black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, today they're using a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side, you can see titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the Falcon 9's second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches. Automatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, upper stage of the Falcon 9 powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Fun fact, SpaceX needed to rush a couple of these MVAC engines from Hawthorne out here to Florida in order to support Starlink missions both this week and looking at the one next week, targeting about May 12th. Or rather, that's the end of this week. They chartered a Ukrainian Antonov plane to make sure they got here on time, since moving them by ground like they normally do would mean that they would miss their launch opportunity today. So I had to get them over here with the quickness. Speaking of the Merlin vacuum engine, following the deployment of the Starlink satellites,
Strongback retract has started.
It'll be used for a third time for a deorbit burn, forcing it back to the atmosphere, where it will help to eliminate the risk of space debris on this mission. You heard that call out for strong back retract. The clamp arms underneath the payload fairings will open up, and the transporter erector you see there in front of the rocket from our perspective will recline back about 1.5 degrees, stay in that position until liftoff. Rounding out our discussion of the vehicle, though, at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings, standing at about 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall. They are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter, made up of a carbon composite material. They will also be recovered, as mentioned earlier in the broadcast, a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. And like the booster, they'll be brought back into Port Canaveral, where they will be taken on land over to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and refurbished, turn around for future flights. As you're hearing the rocket come alive from the audio at the pad, you're getting some views now from SpaceX. This pad shot here. Again, you can see just how non-sooty this particular booster is, as this is going through its third flight today. Those are the aforementioned payload fairings. You can see the transporter erector just leaning back just a little bit here. You're now T-minus 2 minutes, 49 seconds and counting for the liftoff of this mission.
Stage 1 lock slot is complete.
With that call out, Falcon 9 is nearly fully fueled and almost ready to go. We're just waiting for one last call out. That is second stage liquid oxygen load complete. That should come just about the 2-minute mark.
Stage 2 lock slot is complete.
Here, the call for stage 2 lock load complete. You're just topping up the water tower here. You can see some of it cascading over, and actually kind of a fun shot here at the pad.
Ground gas closeout.
Call for ground gas closeouts mean we're just a little over a minute away from the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. They, of course, want to make sure they have all the water they need in their
Falcon 9
sound
is the
suppression
startup.
system for liftoff. Waiting for the go for launch call.
Countdown. Go for launch.
And there's that go ahead. We are now 30 seconds away from the liftoff of the Falcon 9 here from historic pad 39A. Less than 20 seconds away from SpaceX taking the record from the Space Shuttle program with the most launches from this historic pad. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, cementing its place in history. Now, one more flight than all of the space shuttles in the entire 30-year run. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and the flags at the press site, soaring high above Florida's Space Coast. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. So far, all moving nominally with this Falcon flight, just a little more than a minute after liftoff. The call to Falcon is now traveling faster than the speed of sound, coming up on max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Good call out there. Coming up on a few different events in rapid succession. First will be first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation about 4 seconds later, and then second stage engine start, SES1. Some great views from our tracking team. This is from Pete Karsten's Max Q Productions. This is from our friend Chuck Briggs. That call out, they are thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine in preparation for its burn to begin. Now less than 20 seconds away from MECO. You see MECO?
Main engine
Stage
cutoff.
separation. And SES1.
Stage separation confirmed.
And some great views from the onboard cameras, the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Payload fairings should be jettisoning. There you can see them falling away. See the same.
Separation confirmed.
And there's the view from the onboard cameras. The Starlink satellite's now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. Still a great view of the payload fairings from Pete Carson's tracking camera. Great tracking work here, Pete. Well done. And to the rest of our team as well, Adam and Chuck. Some nice daylight views from the Falcon 9's onboard cameras in both the first and the second stages. You see those little puffs and bursts from the Falcon 9
are on a nominal trajectory.
From the Falcon 9 first stage. Those are the cold gas thrusters helping to adjust the attitude of the Falcon 9 first stage. It begins to orient itself towards a landing on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Coming up in just about 4 minutes. Nice views of the Bahamas there, just off the edge of the Falcon 9 booster. Coming up on 5 minutes into flight. The next milestone we're looking at is the start of the first stage entry burn, which will begin at about 2+6 minutes and 9 seconds. It's a little bright here in the middle of the afternoon, so it may not be visible to our tracking cameras on the ground, but we'll try to get that in view if we can and bring you those images if we're able. Of course, we'll see them from the SpaceX onboard cameras, of course. But always nice to bring you a ground perspective if it's possible. Now less than 30 seconds from the start of that entry burn.
Both vehicles continue to follow a nominal trajectory.
Coming up on the start of that entry burn in just a few seconds in real time.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
It doesn't look like our ground cameras can catch it, but here's the start of that entry burn from the onboard camera views. Burn lasting a little more than 20 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Here's the end of that entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS saved.
Next milestone coming up is the start of the landing burn just before the 8-minute mark. We're about a minute away from that taking place. Now less than 30 seconds away from the start of that landing burn, real time. The time you're looking for again is T
Stage
plus
1 transonic.
7 minutes and 55 seconds there on the SpaceX clock at the bottom of your screen.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Booster coming in for its third landing.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And a good landing of that first stage booster.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Back shutdown.
And with that call out, the Falcon 9 upper stage is going into that coast phase until about T plus 54 minutes, 13 seconds. And there will be a quick 2-second burn of that Merlin vac you mentioned, setting up for the Starlink satellites to deploy at about T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 22 seconds. And as I mentioned at liftoff, with this launch, historic milestone for SpaceX is now with its combined Falcon family of rockets, it has surpassed the total number of space shuttle missions that have lifted off from this historic launch pad. There were 82 shuttle flights. There have now been 83 Falcon missions. 74 using the Falcon 9 and 9 using the Falcon Heavy. With that, I want to thank just a few more folks for their support this afternoon as we're taking a look back now at the empty pad here at 39A. Want to give our appreciation to those who helped support our live coverage this afternoon before we go ahead and start to close things out. Our thanks to, just now noticing, my mom joining us back in the live chat, Mama Robinson. If you haven't already said hello to Mary, be sure to give her a shout out. Joining us from hopefully sunny California. Hey, Mom. Also, thanks to I Am Lita, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Lita. Lita says, hello, Will and team. Glad to be here with my Spaceflight Now family. And we hope to see you back again here, Lita, for our coverage of the Starlink 8-2 mission coming up in less than 12 hours now. The Goated One Northeast gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, actually 20 in total. Just see gifted another 10 just recently. Really appreciate that, Goated. And to our 20 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank the Goated One in the live chat if you happen to receive membership from him. Our thanks as well to Walter Garbarzik. Hope I didn't just completely butcher that, Walter, but thank you so much for your support through channel membership as well as the super chat here. Thanks to another one of our wonderful channel members, Mel Roberts Harold, saying, watching from the comfort of my favorite chair here at home in Chicagoland. Hopefully I'll get back to Coco soon. So much more fun watching from the backyard with the grandpups. It's always lovely to see you launch in person, but I have a fond place in my heart for the Chicagoland area as a Northwestern alum. So I'm sure you had a lovely time watching it from your vantage point. And then finally, want to welcome Justin Devin Peck joining us the channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Justin. We're glad to have you with us. And with that, let's go ahead and begin to close out our show as we always do by checking out the mission stats as they currently stand now that we've had a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 rocket. This was the third flight of this particular booster, still pretty young, lots of missions still ahead of it. It's actually 1083, not 1069, just a little typo there. This was the 332nd Falcon 9 launch to date, the 47th Falcon 9 of 2024. This was SpaceX's 275th Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once before. This was SpaceX's 48th launch of 2024, including the third integrated flight test of its Starship rocket. In fact, just earlier today, they did a static fire test of Ship 30 as they await the approval from the FAA to launch flight test number 4 down in southern Texas. This is SpaceX's 114th orbital launch in the last 365 days. Again, the historic 83rd for SpaceX, launching from Ad 39A. And this was the 176th overall orbital launch from this pad. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 68th landing on the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas that made it the 237th overall drone ship landing and SpaceX's 305th booster landing to date. Here's they are in the bar chart. Following the mission tonight, they will have reached the halfway point of all the launches that they completed last year. And of course, we're coming up on the halfway point in 2024, but still a majority of May to go in all of June. So SpaceX pace is well outdoing that they had last year. So the team is moving in the direction that they were hoping to achieve. Finally, moving out to some industry stats, this was the 35th orbital launch from Florida this year, the 50th orbital launch from U.S. soil. This was the 54th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, including the 4 from Rocket Lab down in New Zealand. This is the 87th orbital launch from around the globe with a couple of mishaps, and here's where the pie chart stands right now. China now reaching 20 launches on the year after recently launching back on, or just yesterday, as a matter of fact, with their Long March 6C rocket on its inaugural mission. In fact, it's been a big year for orbital class rockets. That was the 4th flight debut of an orbital class rocket this year so far. We've seen United Launch Alliance have its maiden flight of the Vulcan rocket back on January 8th. Orion Space Technology, another Chinese company, launching their Gravity 1 rocket back on January 11th. On April 11th, Roscosmos launched the first flight of the Angara A5 rocket. And then, as just mentioned, Long March 6C lifting off for the very first time just yesterday. Big year in space flight, and of course, we're anticipating at least one more rocket making its way out into the marketplace, that being Blue Origin's New Glenn. Looking possibly at launching in late September, sending the Escapade mission on its way to Mars. And that'll go ahead and do it for us today. Again, be sure to join us back here again for our live launch coverage of the Starlink 8-2 mission, lifting off from Vandenberg Space Force Base tonight at 7:48 p.m. Pacific, 10:48 p.m. Eastern, 02:48 UTC for our friends joining around the world. See the strong back continuing to move its way up into an upright position. SpaceX working to turn around its launch pads as quickly as possible to continue their launch cadence that they're trying to rev up over the course of the year. I want to thank our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions for his support, as well as our friend Chuck Briggs helping to track the rocket today. Our thanks, as always, to the moderators in the live chat, Astro Jen, Rusty Shackelford, for helping us out both here and on Launchpad Live. Really appreciate the two of you. Thanks to our launch photographer team. Michael Caine was off today, but Adam Bernstein hard at work, and you can find both of their works over at their handles on X, formerly known as Twitter. You search for either Adam Bernstein or Michael Caine. You should find them with fair ease. Thanks also to our editor of Spaceflight Now, Stephen Young. And most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you're watching with us. We're taking a little bit of time to get educated on this Falcon 9 rocket and catch the latest launch from here on Florida's Space Coast. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Oh, sorry, Astro Joe. Miss you there in the live chat. Appreciate what you do for us as well. And I'll throw in a nod to Stephanie B down in Australia as well. Very appreciative of our mods. We will see you guys back in action again. Starlink 8-2 coming up tonight. Let's see if SpaceX is able to make it a double launch day. But until then, bye-bye.